This is a real NASCAR sponsored by Dogecoin, and this is a story of how two communities on Reddit would bond together to create one of the most bizarre yet awesome cars in NASCAR history. We begin in the year 2014 with the team of Phil Parsons Racing and NASCAR driver Josh Wise. Wise had been driving at the team for the 2014 season, and they didn't have sponsors to back the car for most of the races. This was shown when the 2014 Food City 500 at the famous Bristol Motor Speedway rolled around, as the team didn't have a sponsor and was forced to race in an unsponsored black car. This, however, would lead to one of the greatest community events in history. A user in the Dogecoin community on Reddit would notice Wise without a sponsor during the race at Bristol, and knowing that more than likely the team wouldn't have a sponsor lined up for many of the races during the season. So the user made a post trying to convince other Redditors the idea of somehow sponsoring the car for a race later that year at Talladega. You might be wondering, why would they sponsor him at that specific track? You see, the reason why is because of what Talladega is. The track is a 2.66 mile super speedway, one of the fastest tracks that NASCAR goes to. The racing is super narrow and can result in large wrecks that can take out a majority of the field.
Here we go. There was no way. He's hurt. Porter's in it. Bobby Labonte's in it. Stremmy's in it. Jeff Gordon down to the ground.
Nothing else coming from behind you.
And Kurt Busch went over and over.
As a result, there have been times when an underdog winner will end up being victorious. Such a case was seen a year prior when David Reagan would pull off the impossible by winning the race for Front Row Motorsports, who at the time were one of the teams that ran constantly in the back. So with a little help from the Dogecoin and NASCAR subreddits, they were able to raise over $55,000, which is worth 60 million Dogecoins back then. And today, that is worth an astonishing $7.4 million. That $55,000 was enough money raised to sponsor Wise's car at Talladega. The car would look like this, and it was perfect. It was even somehow created as a die-cast replica, which is worth a ton of money nowadays. When the big race rolled around, Wise would end up qualifying 37th, and unfortunately he would not win the race. Denny Hamlin would take home the checkered flag and win the Aaron's 499 for the first time in his career, with Wise ending up finishing in 20th place. Not that bad of a finish. However, he did end up finishing 2 places ahead of driver number 10, Danica Patrick. If you're wondering why I mentioned her name, because this wouldn't be the last time she finished behind this Dogecoin car, and the next time would be for a bigger reason. We fast forward 2 weeks later and it's time for the All-Star race, which is the race where only those who have either won a race or have won a championship previously are locked into race for $1 million. However, there are 2 other ways of getting into that prestigious race, either racing your way in the open race or securing the fan vote. Josh Wise would be one of those competing in the open race. However, since the car he was driving wasn't that competitive, he would have to mostly rely on the fan vote to get into the race. However, he would have to face one of NASCAR's most popular drivers at the time, Danica Patrick. Patrick had won the previous year's fan vote by a large margin, and she was expected to do so again if she didn't race her way into the race. However, the Redditors would not let their man go down without a fight, so once again, the Dogecoin and NASCAR subreddits bonded together to mass vote Josh Wise and try and get him into the All-Star race. The open races would come around and drivers Clint Boyer and AJ Allmendinger would lock themselves into the race by finishing first and second at the end of the race. Shortly after the conclusion of that final stage, it would be announced on the broadcast that Josh Wise had won the All-Star fan vote. He would be racing the next night for a chance at $1 million. But fortunately, he wouldn't end up winning. Jamie McMurray would win the All-Star race, taking home the $1 million prize, and Josh Wise would finish a respectable 15th place. This community-driven cooperation between 2 different groups still proved that if enough fans get involved in something, they can do things that might have been considered impossible. It all started with one singular post and grew into something that will be remembered forever within the NASCAR community.